Millstone, a small college town nestled in the northeastern part of the United States, is known for its prestigious institutions and its reputation as a hub for aspiring doctors, engineers, and professionals in various fields. Every year, thousands of students flood into this small town, each with dreams of a brighter future, seeking success in exams, classes, and ultimately their careers. It's a place where ambition is high and the pressure to succeed weighs heavily on young shoulders. However, Millstone is also home to a darker, more sinister story that lurks just below the surface, one that a group of young women would soon come to know all too well. It all began with a group of 4 freshmen, Sarah, Emily, Grace, and Lily, who arrived at Millstone to attend college in the fall of 2020. They were from different parts of the country, each drawn to the university by its excellent reputation and the promise of a brighter future. They quickly bonded in their freshman dorm, Millstone Hall, an old building that had been converted into student housing. The dorm was known for its prime location and its affordable rates, making it a popular choice among incoming students. From the start, Sarah, Emily, Grace, and Lily became inseparable. They shared stories of their hometowns, their families, and their dreams for the future. Their bond seemed unbreakable, and for the first few weeks, everything seemed perfect. They settled into their rooms on the 3rd floor of Millstone Hall, a wing of the building known for its quiet atmosphere and beautiful views of the surrounding campus. The 4 of them spent their days studying, attending classes, and enjoying the occasional late-night pizza or movie marathon. The nights were long, filled with whispered conversations and laughter, but there was always a sense of comfort in the air until things began to change. It started subtly at first. Sarah, the most practical of the group, was the first to notice it. One evening, she was resting in her room, trying to catch up on some reading. As she lay on her bed, she suddenly felt an immense weight on her chest. It wasn't physical, more like an invisible force pressing down on her, making it hard to breathe. Her heart began to race, and she looked around, convinced that someone was standing over her. But when she opened her eyes, no one was there. She sat up in bed, looking around her room in disbelief. Her breath came in short gasps as she tried to convince herself it was just a bad dream. She quickly shook it off and told herself to relax. But that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The next day, she decided to take a walk around campus, hoping the fresh air would clear her mind. As she passed by the other girls' rooms, she noticed that Emily, Grace, and Lily were all sitting together in the common area, chatting. She joined them and told them about the strange sensation she had felt the night before, the heaviness on her chest, the feeling of being watched. The others listened intently, but at first, they dismissed it as a stress-induced reaction. After all, they were all adjusting to college life, and the pressures of studies and the uncertainty of the future could be overwhelming. But then, things took a turn. Over the next few days, each of the girls began to experience strange occurrences. Emily was the next to speak up. One night, while she was studying in her room, she began to hear strange noises coming from the walls. It sounded like nails scratching the surface, dragging slowly across the plaster. She looked up, but there was no one there. The noise stopped, but when she looked back at the wall the next morning, she saw that something had been written on it in faint, jagged letters. "Hello." Emily thought it was just her imagination playing tricks on her. But as the days went by, the scratching sounds continued, and new words appeared on the walls. "Focus. Don't give up. Good night." It was as if someone was trying to communicate with her, but who and why? At first, she kept it to herself, not wanting to sound crazy. But one evening, after the scratching sounds grew louder and more frequent, she couldn't take it anymore. She gathered Sarah, Grace, and Lily in the common area and told them about what had been happening. They were all skeptical at first, but Emily's distress was evident, and they couldn't deny the eerie coincidences. Grace, always the rational one, didn't believe in ghosts or the supernatural. She suggested that maybe the noise was coming from the pipes or the heating system. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. One night, she stayed up late, studying for an upcoming exam. She was sitting at her desk, listening to music, when she suddenly heard someone whisper her name in her ear. She jumped out of her chair, heart pounding, but when she turned around, there was no one there. She checked the hallway outside her room, but it was empty. She returned to her desk, trying to push the incident aside, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Lily, the last to admit it, soon joined the others in discussing the strange occurrences. She had been waking up in the middle of the night to the sound of footsteps outside her door, even though no one was ever there when she checked. It was as if someone was walking past her room in the middle of the night, just out of sight. She felt an oppressive presence in the hallway and even inside her room. The feeling was so strong that she couldn't sleep without the lights on. The four friends soon realized that they were not experiencing these strange occurrences alone. Each of them had their own unsettling experiences, and they all began to fear that someone was haunting Millstone Hall. They began to question whether the building itself had a dark history, but they didn't know where to turn for answers. They decided to visit the campus library to research the history of the building, hoping to find some clue about what was happening to them. What they discovered sent chills down their spines. Millstone Hall, it turned out, had once been an old boarding house for young women during the early 1900s. According to historical records, the building had been the site of several suicides, all of which were linked to the immense pressure the students faced to succeed. The most recent incident had occurred just a few years before the girls arrived. A young woman, overwhelmed by her studies and personal struggles, had taken her own life in room 406, the very room where Emily now slept. The records also mentioned that students often complained about strange happenings in the building, but no one had ever been able to explain them. The discovery left the four friends shaken. It seemed that the spirit of the young woman who had died in room 406 was still lingering in the halls of Millstone Hall. But why were they being affected by her presence? And why had the strange occurrences intensified after they arrived? Desperate for answers, they sought help from a local medium, hoping she could shed some light on their terrifying experiences. The medium, an older woman named Margaret, was known for her ability to communicate with spirits. She agreed to meet the girls at the dorm, and when she arrived, she immediately sensed the heavy energy surrounding them. After a brief session, Margaret confirmed their worst fears. The spirit of the young woman, whose name was Ayla, had never found peace. She was trapped in the building, unable to move on because of the unfulfilled dreams she had left behind. Margaret explained that Ayla had been an ambitious student, much like the girls, and her spirit had become tied to the dormitory, drawn to the intense pressure and determination of the students who lived there. The medium gave the girls a choice. They could either leave the building and let Ayla's spirit continue to haunt Millstone Hall, or they could try to help her find peace. The girls, determined to finish their studies and not be driven away by fear, chose to help Ayla. Margaret provided them with protective charms and instructed them to speak to Ayla directly, asking her to let go of her anger and find peace. The girls followed the medium's instructions, gathering in their room one evening to perform a ritual. They spoke to Ayla's spirit, offering their understanding and compassion for her struggles. They asked her to release the pain that had bound her to the building and to allow the students who followed in her footsteps to pursue their dreams without fear. For the first time in weeks, the girls felt a sense of calm. The oppressive presence that had been haunting them seemed to lift, and the strange occurrences stopped. They continued with their studies, eventually completing their exams and graduating from Millstone University. Years later, Sarah, Emily, Grace, and Lily would look back on their time at Millstone Hall as one of the most unforgettable experiences of their lives. They had faced their fears together, learned valuable lessons about the importance of perseverance, and most importantly, had helped a lost soul find peace. But every time they passed by the old building on campus, they couldn't help but remember the haunting of Millstone Hall and the dark history that had nearly derailed their dreams. And though they had moved on with their lives, they would always carry a piece of that experience with them, one that reminded them that sometimes the past has a way of making itself known, and the only way forward is to face it head on.